Ladies and gentlemen, how the heck are you? We've got rocket builder and engineer. He is also a contractor for NASA. Quite the resume. I mean, I even saw you in some different space programs, the president of space programs.
He is also
research. This is awesome. Now, folks, why haven't we been back to the moon in such a long time? And are we going to go back to the moon? And then after the moon, are we going to go to Saturn? Saturn sounds like a good idea. I hear they're talking about Titan and moons like Cassini that have a lot of water and possibly the building blocks for life. Greg Allison is a legend. Greg, I'm really glad you came on the program. You're super busy. How the heck are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. I think I got some feedback here. Hang on, I got to take care of an issue on my end. There we go.
Feedback. Man,
I'm good now.
Good, good. We even had that feedback taken care of at the beginning, but gremlins jump out at the best times.
Oh, those gremlins, they love us, Rex. They're always here to nip at us, just like skeeters.
Oh, they love us. Oh, yeah, and there's these new things out here called, they're not new, but I just heard about them, called no-see-ums.
Oh, yeah, I rented those in the garden.
Dude, they're wicked. Like, they're like mosquitoes.
They only hit me 1 year, but, man, they're wicked when they hit.
Oh, yeah. They're like mosquitoes on steroids and nano-sized.
And, yeah, you can hardly see them. It's like, what the heck is doing this? Ah!
Yeah. I thought that I had some nano drones coming in from a different dimension. But speaking of nano drones, folks, I want to show you something really cool. Is it a nano drone? No, it's not a nano drone, but never waste money on batteries again. Get one. Get two. PatriotSolarBank.com. This thing is awesome. You literally have power and perpetuity as long as you've got sunlight. You put this thing on the dash, you can plug your phone into it. You can plug two devices into this thing, and it works. It's quick. Go to PatriotSolarBank.com. It even comes with a really cool compass in case you get lost. And if you use the code LEAKPROJECT, get an additional 15% off. I got them to load it, 50% off, additional 15% off. That's 65% off. Captain Obvious told me that. Hello, get yours. PatriotSolarBank.com. Okay, now let's get into the exciting stuff, Greg. Why haven't we gone back to the moon, man? Are there like Anunnaki, Antarctica dudes out there that are like 9 feet tall, or is there just something else going on?
You know, I wish that was the excuse or the reason, Rex. Everybody always wants to know, but really and truly, it was a lack of willpower, because back when we were going to the moon originally, everybody says, if we can go to the moon, why can't we do this? If we can go to the moon, why can't we do that or the other? And the moon program was very visible. Everything NASA does is very visible. Today, NASA gets less than 0.5% of the federal budget. I mean, like 0.4% of the federal budget. But back in the day, they got 2 or 3%, but still, it was a small fraction. Most people thought that most of the federal money went to NASA and going to the moon. And so a lot of people got angry at it because they thought, well, we got all these other problems. Well, since then, we have spent zillions times more money on all these other problems. We haven't solved any of them, to be honest. So seems like they just get worse and deeper. The war on poverty has been an absolute loss. We've lost that war. Really, what we should have is prosperity as a war on poverty. Government just doling money up, don't do it. You've got to build an economy. It doesn't say you don't take care of people that have real needs, but we certainly have not made progress in many of these great wars that we've declared on various and sundry things. So, but we actually built 2 Saturn V's that were meant to go to the moon that didn't fly to the moon. They were used for other things or put in museums. Actually, it was 3. We were meant to have, Apollo 17 was the last one. We had on schedule and built hardware for 18, 19, and 20. And probably if it hadn't been for the drama of Apollo 13, it probably wouldn't have been an Apollo 14, because quite honestly, one of the biggest problems is that NASA succeeded wildly in making the greatest adventure of life on Earth in its entire history, the greatest, most exciting thing, completely boring. I mean, we have just landed on the moon. Everything is nominal. Now we're going to go back to the moon. The moon is an exciting place to go to. I mean, if I could bottle the meetings at NASA, and sell what's in those bottles, I'd have the best sleep aid in the world. I'd be a billionaire just from selling sleep pills. NASA meetings in a bottle. I mean, but that's the way they are. They're afraid to look exciting or anything because they're afraid it's going to get them all kind of criticism. And it's mostly self-criticism because engineering type people, we tend to be like that. Some few of us happen to be an exception. Some of us are a little bit, off the wall or off the cuff. But, our standard is not long hair and beard, just wearing a plaid shirt with pins in it and, trying to be the ultimate ultra conformist. And I don't fit very well within that mold, but somehow I managed to hang on and have a long career doing NASA-related stuff, occasionally defense and a little bit on the industrial side, but mostly NASA stuff for decades on end. One of these days they're liable to kick me out and kick me hard because I'm not the conformist. I'm a loudmouth redhead, and sometimes that's kind of a rough road to hoe in a organization of conformists. And that's where I'm at. I'm in a conformist type environment, and you're not even supposed to talk loud, and that's very difficult for me. I'm like a dog, I bark, and for guys like me, telling a dog now you got to act like a cat, be a cat. If you're not a cat, you're going to be in deep trouble. It's exceedingly hard, Rex, to say the least. So I'm a misfit, and I admit it, but I've done very well over the years. I've brought up all kind of issues, and I've got whole armies of people running around in circles. To quote Charlie Daniels, stepping and fetching like their rear end's on fire and their hair's a catching. He used other words, but you know what I mean. That was a line from one of his songs. Some of you might know what song that is. But in any event, why are we not going back to the moon? It's mainly political will. Mainly will. The problem, see, there are great reasons for doing lots of things. There's great reasons for going back to the moon. We need to put humanity in a position of being able to survive cosmic catastrophes. On Earth, we have all our eggs in one basket. And there are many baskets out there, or baskets that could be built, such as the space habitat concept that I've shown pictures of many times on here. That's just one of many examples of the kind of thing you could do. That's not necessarily the one that I would even advocate, but it's a pretty picture that's just on the cover of that book, and I can whip it out real fast and show it to you without any trouble. So that said, the possibilities are endless for what we could do in space, the kind of economies we could have in space. But the problem is, when it comes to private enterprise, developing space requires high levels of investment. The lead times before you make profits are really long. And that's hard to justify when you can find other things that have a faster rate on return. What you find is those few rich people who do put the money in space are the people who are doing it for other reasons. Maybe sometimes it's ego. Hey, I got my own space program. Well, I once did have my own space program myself, and I wasn't even a rich guy. But it's not a surviving industry. A lot of us have done these things in the past, and but the ones that are still around are the ones funded by billionaires, and I'm somewhat shy of being a billionaire, Rex. But that said, I'll go back to that. I'll touch on that in a moment. But let's look at where the money has come from historically. It's been from governments, from politics, and I think politics kind of reminds me of poly, mini, and ticks. Little blood-sucking bugs, many blood-sucking bugs. That's politics for you. And that's how government survives. It sucks off the population, the people, and does whatever they want to with whatever they suck off. And for a while, they did occasionally they do something good with it. But to a politician, he's only interested in one thing. I mean, you have all these great ideas. I've got all these friends of mine who are space advocates, and they think that if you got a great idea, you can go to Congress and sell it to them. No, they're not interested. They're not at all interested. It never will be. Just because you got a great idea. You can have two things. This one's hands down a zillion times better than this one. But if it's not jobs in their district, they don't care. They're not interested. They just as soon shoot that as anything. The only thing a politician cares about is getting reelected. so he can keep his little game going, or make sure he don't get put in jail for all these little side things he's doing while he's in office, how he's capitalizing on being in office, he or she or whatever. A politician's job, their main role is to stay in office. I really do believe we should have term limits. That should put an end to some of that stuff, but that's just Greg Allison talking. In any event, if it don't catch their direct interest for that purpose, you might as well be talking to a doorknob or a hammer. It's, yeah, they might sit there and go along with it. It might give you some lip service, but it's going in one ear and out the other, not paying attention to you. So that's why NASA programs are typically, we say the support for NASA is a mile wide, but like a millimeter deep. I mean, if you spread the programs out like peanut butter all over the country, you'll get a little bit of support from all these different politicians, just a little bit, but not enough to do anything great and wonderful. And in fact, it's very inefficient to have projects spread out so far in terms of organization and running them, because now most of your effort goes into interfacing with all these different people and places far flung all over the globe. You take the International Space Station, it's an amazing project, but by far, hands down, the vast majority of the cost was for interface control documents to marry and partner together understandings for what goes at each interface between far-flung partners all over the country and world. And it wasn't the actual technology employed. I mean, heck, space stations, tin cans with pressurized tin cans, albeit, but not pressurized more than one atmosphere, with plumbing and wiring running through them, and some data systems and some robotics. I know I've been a space station engineer for decades. I know ISS in and out and robotic systems and various and sundry things about it. A lot of my fingerprints and designs are all over ISS. And it's a great project, but again, it's an animal of how it's developed from a system that has very thin political support, but spread wide. If it wasn't spread wide, it wouldn't exist. So that's a very extremely inefficient way to run any kind of program. But that's how the government operates. And if you're a government agency, you have no choice but live within that paradigm. And just because you got a good idea, don't mean it's going to go anywhere. So to really get a good idea to go somewhere, it's got to be overwhelmingly good, and you got to spread it around, which takes out some of the good, unfortunately. Now, the real reason to go back to space is, to me, it was always been several things. One, there's always the adventure, the novelty. I think we're here in this universe to experience novelty and to help the universe appreciate itself, and it's almost like a holy mission in and of itself. But when you have poverty, people have a hard time understanding chasing novelty. Now, the truth is that space has a wealth of resources that could address problems here on Earth. We could also take a lot of our environmental burdens off the planet and move them into space. So space has many solutions for a lot of the problems that we face. And in particular, space provides us a potential solution against planetary impact, things that could wipe this planet out. Now, these impacts come in various sizes. The events like take out the dinosaurs happen every maybe 35 million years, something that big. But civilization is very fragile. If you look on my Green Greg's channel, there's a video about just how fragile our civilization is. It's extremely fragile. A lot of people don't really realize that it wouldn't take a lot because this house of cards we call civilization completely crumble. Nothing on the order of what killed the dinosaurs, far, far, far short of that. But smaller objects hit the Earth more frequently. Now, it's highly interesting, Rex. Today is the 50th anniversary of the Saturn V Apollo 11 moon launch. Today, 50 years ago, we launched the first crew of people that would land on the moon on top of a Saturn V rocket, which was developed right here where I'm at in Huntsville, Alabama area, Madison County, at the Marshall Space Flight Center where I happen to work. And they actually built the first three and built in 4708. And it was contracted. The various stages were contracted out across the country. The first stage, the big one, was built by Boeing, the S1C and Michoud facility, close to New Orleans. Some of you people may be aware of that. But another thing, many things happen on these anniversaries. It's kind of interesting, but it just so happens on the silver anniversary of the moon launch, on the 25th anniversary of the day the rocket was launched, today, 25 years ago, Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 had broke into 21 pieces, Rex. That is 3 times 7. And numerologists love those kind of numbers. But 3 times 7, for what it's worth, let those that like to figure those things play with it, if it means anything to you at all. But the first impact on Jupiter occurred on the launch date. The biggest impact on Jupiter occurred on the landing date, and the last on the moon. The last impact on Jupiter occurred exactly on the splashdown date. So the comet was impacting Jupiter every day throughout the course of the 25th anniversary from the launch to the splashdown of Apollo 11. And I just found that just wow, uncannily strange. The biggest impact collisions we've ever witnessed in our solar system in the modern era occurred on the silver anniversary of our first mission to the moon, in exactly bracketing launch, landing, and splashdown. To me, that was like a cosmic warning message. Like, wow, that is like off the charts. And even if you don't believe in coincidences and all these kind of things, which, you know, us engineers aren't supposed to believe in that kind of stuff, but still, it is a warning, because what we saw, some of those impacts on Jupiter created fireballs as large as Earth. Jupiter is huge. It left huge, big, smoking black holes in the clouds that were as big as Earth for some long time. Now, Jupiter has a very dynamic atmosphere, and eventually got to mix all that up. On Earth, any one of those impacts would have ended our civilization. Impacts much smaller than any one of those would have ended our civilization. Any of those would have probably been actually extinction level events. So it's highly interesting. Also, Shoemaker, one of the discoverers of this comet, happened to have been the geologist who trained astronauts to explore craters in Arizona and out west. Shoemaker was the astronomer who trained the Apollo moon landing astronauts. To make it even stranger, to recognize Shoemaker after he died, his cremated remains, part of those were actually flown to the moon and impacted the moon. Shoemaker became a lunar impactor. He is the 13th man on the moon. He's basically buried on the moon. I mean, the coincidences, the everything involved in it, Rex, is just off the charts. Unbelievable. All these things that happen around that is just really strikes me as so uncanny. Shoemaker is one of the guys, Shoemaker and Levy, the two guys that discovered that comet. And Shoemaker was, you know, it might have been a couple comets, his name on a lot of comets, a lot of people's names, but he happened to discover the one that became an impactor. That's impact totally bracketed the Apollo 11 mission. I mean, the coincidences are just bell ringing off the charts. But of course, bell curve says that can happen. It's not outside the realm of possibility. So, you know, being the astute plaid shirt, you know, engineer, I'll say, well, that situation, Mom will carry on. But in any event, what do you think?
So my mind is, you were talking and I'm taking notes, and you said fireballs bigger than the Earth impacted Jupiter the same time as the Apollo 11 launch or the landing?
They occurred throughout that time span, Rex. The biggest impactor occurred exactly on the landing date. These were all huge impacts on Jupiter. And they left a ring around Jupiter of huge necklace holes, big dark splotches in the clouds. I mean, you can go back and you can look it up on the internet. You can find the pictures of the impacts as seen from Hubble. The fireballs are huge, huge fireballs. Jeez. Now they're huge because that's Jupiter's atmosphere blowing out. On Earth, you know, there's not that much material to blow out that far. However, that gives you an idea of the kind of energy involved in these. You know, there's many times, you know, the nuclear arsenals that we have available to us on Earth in one spot. you might say it's fortunate it would be in one spot, not spread out everywhere like, a rain of warheads. But then again, comets can break up into, they're flying rubble piles, and so are asteroids. I mean, these things can break up and hit you in many places. Now, if you go back and look at the history of some of the impacts, you'll find other impact. There was impact in Chicxulub in the Yucatan that's believed to wiped out the dinosaurs, but there's also an impact in Kansas in the same time frame and an impact somewhere else. If you think about the Laurentide ice sheet is possibly taking a comet impact that initiated the Younger Dryas at the end of the last ice age, we also find that there's an impact in Greenland. And now there's stories of impacts on other places of the Earth that fit exactly that time frame, craters. The one on the Laurentide ice sheet never made a crater because the ice sheet was 2 miles thick. But there's evidences of water, it was 2 miles, 10,000 feet up. There's evidence of water being splashed all over the place. And the Carolina Bays are a signature of something having happened that correlates if you trace them all back to that location. In fact, because the Carolina Bays are oval shaped. An oval has 2 foci. And if you draw a line between them, that tells you where the impact was. And if you line them all up, they all point in the same direction. I actually think there's 2 sets. I think there's a set that indicates that there was another impact not too far apart in time. So it really looks like that that something's been happening, and we just need to be aware of it. I mean, it might be that the dinosaur, the extinction of the dinosaurs could just be proof that they didn't have a space program. Of course, we got a space program, but if something comes along today like that, we're not in a position right now to stop it. We just haven't invested enough. We haven't built the infrastructure to go out there and do those kind of things. Now, there's 2 models for exploring space, or there's 3 or more. NASA likes to go out and put flags and footprints on places. Now they're talking about the moon being the training ground for the next step. They're interested in going to Mars, and I really believe that the government should take on the role of explorer, kind of like Lewis and Clark, or the explorers that went out to the oceans and explored. And their job should be to set an ever-expanding sphere of exploration, and that private enterprise and companies should come behind them and service behind that growing sphere. That way you can build an economy and keep it growing. Because, if you had to build a city in Antarctica and it had to all be funded by the government, you wouldn't do much. But if there was some economic justification for going, then you might have a real city that could sustain itself. I'm not saying that we should put a city in Antarctica, I'm using that as an analogy. But if you look at Elon Musk, he wants to go to Mars. And that's because he wants to go to Mars. He sees Mars as a place that could be terraformed. I personally I think you can get a lot more mileage out of planetary materials by building habitats like that. And Elon Musk agrees with me on that accord, by the way. Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is interested in mining asteroids and the moon and things like that, and build an economy in space. And the economy can get more people involved and have industry and have people living in cislunar space, which is the area around the Earth and Moon, basically, or nearby. So you don't have as far to go if you have a problem. But we can build a huge civilization out there and use the resources of space and mine some of these asteroids that would otherwise strike us and wipe us out, and instead turn them into places to live, into resources for an economy, into means to take some of the heavy industry off the Earth, and to make our world a much better, more prosperous place. As you recall, I talked last time about small little habitats that we could live in and make a living out of, and totally live in concert with nature. Even with this, I'm all for living in concert with nature. And so a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their mind around where I'm coming from when I'm both high tech and also believing in doing things naturally. But to have a good closed loop ecological life support system, like putting contaminants in it, that's what you're going to have to do, Rex. And we can live that way on Earth or in space. Yeah.
Let me jump in on that note, because I am looking at a awesome article that has gotten quite a bit of coverage, actually multiple articles talking about this, the Golden Asteroid that can make everyone on Earth a billionaire. And then there's another article that comes out and says, no, this asteroid that's filled with gigatons of gold won't make anybody richer. But according to this article, whether it was the Big Bang, Midas or God himself. We don't really need to unlock the mystery of the origins of gold when we've already identified an asteroid worth 700 quintillion in precious heavy metals. And it's titled the Psyche 16, and it's taking resonance between Mars and Jupiter, carrying around enough heavy metals to net every single person on the planet close to $1 trillion. NASA, check this out. The massive quantities of gold, iron, and nickel contained in this asteroid are mind-blowing. The discovery has been made now. It's a question of going or proving it up. NASA plans to do just that beginning in 2022. Your thoughts?
Well, for one, if you dump that much material on the market, the value is going to drop. But but of course, the key is that you have to be able to return it go get it and return it in such a way that the cost of bringing it back is less than the cost of going out and getting it, or that the value of the material is less than the total cost of going to get it. And that can be a challenge with space systems, as we have been designing and using them in the past. However, there are concepts elucidated by Dr. Lewis. I got to remember his name. I had it on my mind a minute ago. There's an astronomer in the Southwest named Lewis who's written books, and I got them back here somewhere about mining asteroids. I got a whole bunch of his books back here. Mining the Sky. Here's one of them.
Man, while you're getting that, Greg, my mind is still just wrapping around that. What you brought up about these Earth-sized fireballs slamming into Jupiter during the time of the Apollo 11 launch and landing. That's mind-blowing. Folks,
John
is that
Lewis.
crazy?
Yeah. He looks at things like taking the asteroids and reforming some of it to an aerobrake, material, small loads at a time of materials in the atmosphere, so you don't have to use propellant to bring them back. And there's other concepts for things that we might do to lessen the amount of propellants that have to be used, and the way we operate in space in general. But the key thing is, if we can get enough of an economy operate in space that everything don't have to come from Earth to make it work, then suddenly you're in a whole new economic paradigm. Suddenly, indeed, mankind could become infinitely wealthy just because the resources of energy and materials in space are so vast, Rex. They're really vast. We're used to such puny things here on Earth. We're living in the egg that created us, basically, and we're consuming it. And, for the sake of life on Earth, we shouldn't do that. We need to move out and do other things, but we need to do so responsibly. But we can do that. And those are the kind of things that I advocate. Some people have commented they thought I was anti-technology because some of the stands I take. I'm just anti-stupid, Don't do things that's going to poison us. Just because it's tech don't mean it's good. If it's poison, it's not good. And I don't trust all the government reports and so forth. A test where you have agencies that have a conflicted interest with the organizations are supposed to be regulating. When the regulatee and the regulator are in bed with each other, it's like, well, the fox is guarding the hen house. Excuse me, let's find some independent source. And the independent sources for data and testing usually get tamped down. But that's another story. I'm not here to get into that tonight. You asked me why we hadn't gone back to the moon. My answer was political willpower. Fortunately, political willpower is back to a degree now, at least with the administration. Is it sufficient to carry Congress through? I know the Senate's on it, but the House right now is with a different political party, and whereas they might have been for it in the previous administration, now they don't want to make the current administration look good because it's this guy versus that guy, this party versus that party. It's a tragedy that the progress and the survival of mankind can get caught up in bipartisan politics, irrespective of who's in charge at the top or bottom or side or this house or that house. But that's just the way it is, Rex, and it makes it difficult to get things done, which may be a good thing given the kind of things that government can do. But the other good thing is that we have other entities out there now. Private enterprise has got the rich billionaires who've decided to take this on and have decided they can delay the return on investment because they know how big the ultimate prize really is, and they're going for it. You got Elon Musk. You have Jeff Bezos. Now in their own right, you could take issue with any of these guys on a zillion different levels, but I like what Bezos is doing in terms of his notion to totally develop the economy. Now, what Bezos is doing in terms of, basically taking over the economy, and it kind of scares the Jesus out of me, but what he wants to do with space is awesome. That's his dream for space, I think, is dead on. That said, I think if Elon Musk's Starliner vehicle can function as advertised, that's going to be such a radical game changer that we have no concept for where it can take us. It will be mind-boggling. And it may be that Musk is SpaceX Starliner. Now, it may be that Bezos has some similar concept. Like his little suborbital vehicle, he named after Shepard. His next biggest vehicle, he's named after Glenn. Well, Glenn orbited Earth. Is he going to have an Armstrong vehicle for the lunar big capabilities? I don't know. That seems to be the way he names things. So we'll have to see where all this goes. I mean, there are lots of possibilities. And, you and I have had some conversations about things outside the world of rocketry, which is beyond the topic for tonight. I'm sure some of the commenters are already asking about those kind of things, but we've talked about it, and we can talk about it in the future. Allison's laws of rockets are, and I formulated these over probably 30 years ago, back when I was developing hybrid rockets, launch altitude balloons way back when. 1, rockets go boom. 2, rockets have always gone boom. 3, rockets always will go boom. So my job actually is to make them go boom less often, but still rockets go boom. So, getting on a rocket will never be as safe as riding on an airplane, no matter how hard we try. We make it safer, and we can make them a lot safer, but the amount of energy it requires to get you to orbital velocity and to bring you back to Earth is vast. So we have to add all that energy in and take it all back out. There's a lot of room for things to go bad in a hurry. It's like you're putting sticks of dynamite inside your body in terms of the amount of energy involved, several sticks of dynamite. And, when, energy is 1/2 mass times velocity squared. And when you go from, spinning around the core of Earth, at 1,100 miles an hour to going, 17,500 miles per hour for low Earth orbit, or 25,000 miles an hour to go to the moon, or 40,000 miles an hour to go out to the asteroids, you're putting a lot of energy into your body. And you come back to Earth, you got to take all that energy out in a safe manner. And so that's a challenge with the systems that we use today. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm not saying we can't do it safer. I know we can. But it's always going to be a challenge. But we need willpower to do it, because the dreams for what we can do, the preservation of our society, the lesson that we can get, whether it was intentional, whether it's coincidence, whatever you want to take it, Shoemaker 11.9 is something we should pay attention to. It's a warning. The universe has things that happen. We are in a cosmic shooting gallery, because things cross our orbit all the time, asteroids, comets, and it's just a matter of time that some of this stuff hits us. And the more we look, the more stuff we see. We just had one that went between Earth and Moon a couple of days ago, and we usually see these things after they pass. Oh, there it was. Well, okay, we'll catalog it. We'll know when it comes back next time. Was it 30 meters or something? I don't remember what the size was exactly. But these things happen all the time. And we had recently, a few years ago, one happened over Russia. Chelyabinsk, I believe was the name of the area that it hit over. And it busted out a lot of windows. In 1908, one hit in Siberia, August of 19, I believe it was August or 30th of June of 1908, one hit over Siberia that would have wiped out in areas bigger than Washington, D.C. or New York City or areas like that, Ricks. So we have to pay attention to these things. And space can be a place of progress, of prosperity, of beauty, of exploration, of excitement, of expansion of the human psyche, consciousness, of art, of life. And if we don't take that, we could all just die out. The answer to the Fermi paradox may be that civilizations just wipe themselves out before they get there. That's a possible answer. And I know there's a zillion different ideas on that, and that's also beyond the scope of the discussion tonight. But by the way, Rex, one of the reasons I want to know tonight is we're doing a panel with, I'm now once again president of the Huntsville Alabama L5 Society, which is the local chapter of the National Space Society. I, along with some other guys, I was the founding president of this organization back in 1983. And for the first 23 years, 22 of those, I was president. I had 1 year hiatus. And I passed the baton when the organization was 23 years old to a 23-year-old lady. And she passed it to a Chinese gentleman. And he had it for 11 years and has fallen back upon me now for some time period. I'll be looking for some young people to take that mantle because I think young people ought to be involved in these things. And but we're having a program here locally for those that happen to be in the region, for those that happen to be able to get here on the 23rd of this month at 7 p.m. at a brewery known as Straight to Ale. We'll be having a program. And Rex, I'm going to see if I can share this. Can I share this our HAL 5 website here? Let me go to.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, let me find it here.
Hello.
I got to find my. Halo. I got a rocket from a balloon and all. Let's see. I got to find my.
Is finding a website that has rockets on it, and once again, I think you're like one of the main. Didn't you make this website too?
Developed it yourself? This website. I've built websites, but not this one. All right, I'm not sitting at my share screen for some reason. Let me see if I can play with this.
All right, we can.
It's.
Tell me what it is, and I'll share it. Just what's the website name?
It's hal5.org. Are you seeing it?
Let me do it. I'm going to pull it up. Let me do it. hal5.org.
Yeah.
hal5.org. Number 5 is alive. Number 5 needs more input data.
I got to put on my 5G
share screen. That's all I used to do.
Here it is, dude. I found it. Check this out.
hal5.org.
Here it is. It's right here, man. Boom.
There you go.
We just look at it.
Now go down and click the read more.
Would you like to read more, ladies and gentlemen? Let's read more right now.
Read more right now.
The past informs the future.
Yeah, so
HAL5
is a forward-looking organization. We look to the future. We like to honor the past, but we don't want to live in the past. Although some of us probably can be accused of that. But we want to develop the future. So we've created a panel here of Apollo era engineering veterans and of young people today who are also working on landers to get us back down on the moon. 2 of the panelists are working on 2 different lander programs to get us back on the moon. And if you scroll back to the name list, you seem to be having some trouble with that, don't you? There we go. So if you look at the names here, Luke Talley was involved in the inertia ring of the Saturn V moon rocket. He was one of the pioneers of digital computing, one of the early key pioneers who invented a lot of what we have and use today in digital computing. I mean, this stuff started with a Saturn V rocket. I mean, everything we do today with computers, internet, what you and I are doing, this guy was one of the key initial pioneers for this type of stuff. Skeet Vaughn, we used to call him Dr. Lightning. That's what he was known as in the Apollo days, although he was involved in some of the early propulsion work. He's also a pilot and an author. He's one of the first guys that told me about sprites and blue jets back when everybody thought it was funny and bogus. He was finding the evidence for this stuff. And, again, he was Dr. Lightning. As you may be aware, the Saturn V rocket took a direct hit from a lightning bolt on the Apollo 12 mission. The command module shut down. The astronauts were sitting there totally in the dark. But fortunately, the Saturn V rocket was built robust thanks to guys like Luke Talley and Skeet Vaughn, and it kept on trucking. It did not shut down. If it had, we could have had a catastrophic pad explosion. Those things can go off like an atom bomb with all the fuel, like a small atom bomb with all the fuel they had available to them. Fortunately, they got the circuit breakers reset in the Apollo command module, and the mission continued. Had the Saturn V vehicle failed like the command module had, it would have been a very bad day, my friends. Kenny Mitchell's been involved in a lot of development from the Apollo era and still works today as a contractor on the Space Launch System. There's some question he may not be able to make it. Logan Kennedy and David Hewitt are our two young engineers. I say young, relatively speaking. David is now in his 40s, although when he was in college, I took him out to sea to help us launch hybrid rockets from high-altitude balloons from ships. And so to me, he's always a kid, even though he's 42. Ron Creel was involved in developing the lunar rover. So we got quite an interesting cast of characters here that we're going to look at what lessons learned they can take and how they can inform the future for the younger engineers so that we can make sure that we succeed and don't repeat some of the problems of the past, and how we get through some of the choke points that we'll face. I've already got a list of identified questions to try to keep the program focused on these things. So it'll be a fun program, and it's straight to Ale Brewery. That happens to have the SL2 rocket hanging from the ceiling. That's one of the hybrid rockets I was in charge of developing. I had to run for my life on one occasion because of NASA safety. Of course, now I are one of them. NASA safety almost killed me, and now I are one. So that's another whole funny story. But so it's an interesting place. It has a very strong space theme. The owner works at NASA of the Straight to Ale Brewery. And the whole place, all the drinks have space themes or themes that revolve around the name Straight to Ale. It's a fun place. They even have a little hidden speakeasy. The place used to be a middle school. And there's several other breweries around there. And just down the hallway from this classroom we're going to be teaching in, they actually have a room where people throw axes. I mean, you can go in and drink beer and throw axes. Imagine that, Rex. So,
wait a second. Wait a second. Did you just say, folks, what could possibly go wrong there? Yeah, that's. Do you have to sign a waiver?
No, I don't believe so. But,
may want to consider having that as an option. If you lose any fingers, it's not.
Darts, you throw darts. Hey, we like to live large in Huntsville, Alabama.
I guess.
Hey,
yeah, Huntsville is awesome.
Like that picture you showed them in your thumbnail, I'm standing in a park with rockets growing up, you know. We rockets sprout up around here, you know.
Rockets are pretty cool, man. I like rockets. I can't wait for the new intergalactic jetpacks that are coming out. We're working on those right now in the secret.
Well, my buddy Tim Pickens actually worked on one of those rocket packs, like like they did in the James Bond movie. And one of these days I have to introduce you to him. And if you don't mind, I have did a couple of videos in commemoration of our Apollo anniversary. They're on my Galactic Greg's website. If you don't mind pulling that up, I seem to have a problem pulling my Google Earth.
I'll grab it right now.
So I don't know why it didn't show on my share page when I hit it. Because usually if you open something, it'll come up on your share page, but I didn't see it. That was odd. So if you look at Galactic Greg's, the last two videos I posted, one was on the Saturn V. I posted it today. And yes, because today is the anniversary of the launch date. And I posted another one on the F1 engine, which is the large 1.5 million pound thrust liquid engine. 5 of which were on the first stage, the S1C stage of the Saturn V rocket. And so these are really good videos, and a lot for people to check them out. It's part of our anniversary activity, and so you can get to hear me talk a little bit about rockets and rocketry, rocket engines. And I'll be posting more videos throughout the week on this, maybe Comet Shoemaker Levy 9 and other various assorted topics. You're not able to find it. What?
I found it.
Oh, yeah, look there, my big mouth. That's an F1 engine behind me. That engine is capable of producing 1.5 million pounds of thrust. Now, they have a redesign of it that could do 1.8 million pounds of thrust. 5 of those together on the S1C stage produced 7.5 million pounds of thrust. Now, they did uprate that engine to produce 1,522,000 pounds of thrust. So even that was uprated. That's Marshall Space Flight Center headquarters building behind there. And you're about to hit a view that I actually put in my thumbnail on this, where I saw the flag up there. There you go. That made for a good visualization. I wasn't even thinking about it when I was filming. If I'd have thought about it, I would have poised that picture a little better for the thumbnail. But so you can see I'm wearing the anniversary hat there to commemorate it. And those are the cooling tubes, Rex. To cool the engine bell there, they flowed the fuel through it before it went back up into the turbines to be pumped into the engine. It made the burning the fuel more efficient for it to be preheated, and the nozzle had to be cool too. So they killed two birds with one stone. And speaking of killing two birds with stones, there's actually a bird living on top of that engine right now. You can see it in the video, some part of it. So I'm talking quite a bit of length here about this engine, about the Saturn V S1C stage. I talk a little bit about some of the other engines because there's a Space Shuttle main engine now, RS-25 for the Space Launch System engine off to the left side of that from where I was at. And there's also the upper stage engine for the Saturn V rocket, the J2 engine, which was a full cryogenic engine to the right. It used liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. This engine burned liquid kerosene, rocket grade, called RP1. And what you're showing there, the main thing hanging down from the left there is the turbine. It had a pre-burner in it, Rex, which is kind of like a rocket motor within a rocket, which burned fuel to turn the turbine to turn the pumps. And Rex, that thing alone produced 55,000 horsepower. That turbine produced 55,000 horsepower, Rex. So I go through all this in the video, and I'd like for everybody to watch it if they can, and give me some views and some likes, subscribe to my channel. And then I got another video, that one I posted yesterday. I posted a video since then on the Saturn V, actually. And I start out on the outside of the Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama, and I go inside and show it hanging from the ceiling. I walk underneath it. So, and there's a lot of good information that I talk about both when I'm, outside, depicting it there. That is actually a replica of one that's standing 363 foot tall. And I couldn't get it all, I'm so close to it, I can't get it all in my camera view at once because it's so darn big, kind of like that F1 engine I was standing so close to. You get to really back off to get it all at once. And there's views from inside where there's actually a real Saturn V hanging from the ceiling, broken parts. It's actually an engineering development unit, but it's an actual vehicle inside the building there at the Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama. They had a big gala event there tonight. And and you see they have a beer garden.
Beer and rockets.
Yeah. Well, they do a beer garden, and that's kind of in I guess, commemoration of the Germans that started all this. One of the German rocket team principals, Konrad Dannenberg, and I founded HAL 5, and I've known him for years. In fact, I met Ernst Stuhlinger on the 10th anniversary of the moon landing at a local astronomy club, the Von Braun Astronomical Society's observatory on Monte Mountain. And this gentleman, he's one of the guys depicted in the picture that you had on the thumbnail, one of the old Germans. He's in that picture, Ernst Stuhlinger. He spent a lot of time, I'm just a kid, 19 years old, all interested in the space, about to go into the Army. And Ernst Stuhlinger spent a lot of time talking to me, explaining things and telling me how they raised a dome to build that planetarium and quite a few things like that. I mean, he was just a nice, kindly gentleman who, and that's the way I knew all those Germans from the paperclip team to be. They were all extremely polite, extremely nice, and they went out of the way to help kids and encourage them to follow technical pursuits. And it didn't matter what race you were. They helped kids of all races and backgrounds. They did not at all fit a stereotype that I so often hear, and a lot of things I hear about the paperclip team just don't even make sense to me, Rex. I knew these people. They were nice people. They're one of my new. Von Braun instructed these people, if somebody spoke German to you, to speak back in English. And the Winter Dawn was the last one that worked at the Marshall Space Flight Center, and he worked there until he was 96, and he died shortly after he quit work. And he worked there until just a few years ago. And he used to run up the stairs, had office on the 5th floor where I work now in building 4203. And I'd see him in the morning, I'd say, Guten Morgens, which is good morning in German, and he'd respond, good morning. If I say, woher, if I came to him and said, wie geht es Ihnen? He'd say, how's it with you? I mean, he would take whatever you said in German and return it to you in English. He'd never reply to you in German. But they were gentlemen, and they were all nice. All the ones I knew, I never knew one that fit any other category. And if you had a problem or a question, they would go out of their way to try to help you and answer it. Conrad Dannenberg taught at the Space and Rocket Center and inspired tens of thousands of young people. And that's why he did it. He did that because that's what he liked. These people were trying to develop space and promote space and technology. And yeah, maybe it looks like they got a little blind to what the politics were there when they were in Germany. But as individuals, they were good people. They were caught up in a bad system. I think maybe we're caught up in a bad system. I think everybody in any kind of government's caught up in a bad system. I'm not the best fan of governments. I mean, it's a necessary evil to some degree, but I really believe that the primary form of human governance is a tribe and a community. I think that things need to be kept as local as possible. Power needs to be distributed widely and down to the lowest level. And now we're trying to aggregate everything at the top and put decisions in too few hands. That's tyranny, Rex. Especially in a world where we might be evolving toward a hive mind. That leads to tyranny. There's no way it leads anywhere else, Rex, and it scares me. So that's a whole different discussion. I'm going off topic for tonight. But suffice it to say, I'm all about prosperity, keeping us alive and out of the hive, and seeing prosperity for all. I mean, I believe we can live far better on Earth with almost zero footprint. We don't need to have all this massive industrial scale agriculture and industry that we have today. We can live very prosperous with a whole different regime. And that habitat concept I showed you in our last discussion is part of that. I also do believe, though, that we do need industry. We've got to have infrastructure. See my fragility video, you'll understand that. So I'm not anti-technology or anti-industry. I'm for appropriate industry. But to get there, that's definitely a large-scale industrial exercise. But if you look inside, it's things growing. It's greenery. It's life. And I think that's what it should be all about. And it's going to have to be life within the natural environment. I'm all for use of herbs and things like that. In fact, I just bought a lot of garlic, and I'm growing turmeric, whatever you want to call it, garlic. And I'm trying to get more and more into the medicinal side of my gardening, Rex, from a market gardening aspect. You know, I do worms. I sell worms. I sell worms all over the country year round. I'm shipping worms like crazy. Shipped a bunch today. And but I'm all going more and more into natural systems like it because I think that is the future. When I see a family that can live on for 1/10 of an acre and grow everything they need to eat and have enough left over to sell and make a living, Rex, that's awesome. That's awesome. That tells me there's enough lawns in North America to feed 2 billion people. I mean, right here in North America. Well, that's just the United States and Canada. I'm not even counting Mexico or Central America. So our problems are problems of lack of imagination, lack of will, or thinking that we all have to fit in the cookie cutter mold. I have to have a grass lawn. I have to get up and mow it this short every day. I got to plant it and fertilize it like all the devil so it grows like mad and turns intensely green, but then I got to go out and keep it this short. You know, we're fighting Mother Nature constantly. I mean, the real answer is don't fight nature, work with nature, be part of it. Nature's got so much to offer, and we're just trying to strangle it. And our planet is a place that changes. Modern monoculture agriculture requires stability. Our environment is not a stable environment. It's been uncannily stable for the last 100 years. I don't know what we're going to do for the next 100 years, whether you believe in global warming or global cooling. And I fall down on the side of thinking that we've got an issue with cloud nucleation due to cosmic rays from a solar minimum. And grand solar minimum certainly seems to be in store. And so there is a lot to consider for climate variability that we seem to be coming back into. Climate has been highly variable over the ages. Our stability is just uncanny over the last 100 years. We've enjoyed it, we've grew, we've prospered in it, but now we've got to learn how to ride the roller coaster again. And our current systems aren't designed for that, so we've got to recalibrate. But the good news is, if we are smart about it, we can do that and survive and thrive. If we're stupid, we're going to have billions of people starving to death. warfare. We shouldn't be fighting wars over this stuff. We shouldn't be fighting wars over water. All the powers that be says, well, we're going to have to fight wars over water. Well, that's a good thing for them, I guess, because it justifies all their expenditures and everything they're doing. But it's not necessary. There are other ways of obtaining water out of air and many other ways. You know, as I mentioned, Earthship houses out in the desert have all the water they need from the 10 inches a year rainfall. And with water workers and using water recycling, you could get by with far less, Rex. So there's far too many ways to solve our problems by the use of the mind. Thomas Malthus, when he was counting mouse to feed, said was all going to starve to death by the early 1800s. So he counted mouse, but he forgot to count minds. When you factor the mind in, you've got a whole different paradigm. Our minds, you know, I showed you a picture last time, Rex, of a most beautiful thing in the universe, and it's a baby. That's because the mind is such a wonderful thing, and a baby is so pure. So we should not be wanting to destroy our babies because we have such limited imagination, great machinations of control to put everybody under our thumbnails in our hives, because prosperity awaits us if we're willing to rise to the occasion. The resources in space are boundless, Rex, boundless. There's more out there than we would ever want to get to. But we're not going to reproduce like, you know, gnats and rabbits. I mean, frankly, when humanity is very prosperous, our reproduction goes down. It may be a challenge to keep us at a self-sustaining population. When you don't need a lot of kids to work the farm, and when kids are now more of an expense than an asset, you curtail how many kids you have. I mean, you know, most people are quite content to have a boy and a girl, a couple, 2 or 3 kids at most. And be honest, Rex, that's not a problem. The United States and Europe has populations that have fallen. If it wasn't for immigration, we would be in a population deficit. And that's kind of what the UN projects 100 years out. They think our population will climb for 100 years and drop down. Well, my estimate for those habitats was that you could contain the peak population of the world projected by the UN on that model, be it right or wrong, but based on that model, you could contain the entire population of the world in the habitats like I showed you, where people could sustain themselves in an area the size of Texas and New Mexico or half of Alaska. I mean, Rex, the capabilities, the potentials for our future are huge. And this whole idea that we have too many people and we all have to fight each other, that's all the masters who try to profit from dividing us against each other. There's no excuse for that, Rex. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. Oh, by the way, it's close to the 25th of July. And, you know, July is kind of the halfway point from another time. So, you know, we have to think about Christmas in July, right, Rex? Try to get us on a cheerier thought here.
That's what I'm talking about. We just look at it. We've got Santa in the house.
It's all about Christmas in July. So,
Christmas in July. So the event, in closing here, the event, before we forget, the event that's coming up is on the 23rd of July.
Correct.
And it's in Huntsville, Alabama. And once again, I thought I just had the website pulled up here. Yeah, let me pull up the website one more time. So
HAL5, H-A-L, Huntsville, Alabama, L5.org. If you go to my videos on my Galactic Greg's channel, the last 2 videos have links to this site.
Cool.
So
Okay.
if you go to my video about the Saturn V, if you go to my video about the F1 rocket engine, there's a link to this event on those videos. Also, I did a video recently on Green Greg's channel about the power grid failure in New York. And I would like to say that I found that highly interesting, Rex, that it happened on the 42nd anniversary of the Great New York power outage of 1977, on the 13th of July, exactly, 42 years later. 42 years.
It was on 42nd Street also. And there's also somebody that's going through a major trial right now that was in that general vicinity. I'm going to leave his name anonymous. I think people can look up the EpiPen and find it for themselves. All right, folks. Well, and we're gonna close this out. I tell you, Greg, thank you so much for coming on the program. This has been a blast. I really appreciate you keeping the spirits high and sharing this information with the world. folks, definitely check out that event. Go to Green Greg's YouTube channel. Also check out his other YouTube channel that will be linked at that one. What's the name of the second one you've got?
Galactic Greg.
That's right.
That's
Galactic
the one with
Gregs.
the space stuff, the F1 engine, the Saturn V, and the link to the HAL 5 event. But both channels, are, to most people, it's two different worlds, but in my world, they're really the same. And so, and I talk about that on here, Rex. But what I really am about is a positive future. We have to prepare in case things are bad. But if we really work it, I think we can keep things on the positive. We can escape some of that stuff, or at least survive some of these hurdles and thrive on the other side at the worst.
That's what I'm talking about. It's all about survival and thriving in survival, folks. I want internet. I want to take a warm shower. I want to be able to go to $7, even though their coffee sucks. So we'll keep it going.
My goal is to survive, thrive, and stay out of the hive.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna use that. Survive, thrive, stay out of the hive. Ladies and gentlemen, remember those words. Be excellent to each other and be the change you want to see. Nice. The Greg, the legend. All right, man. Well, thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. I guess we can hit the stop record here. And you're still recording. I don't care, but I'm gonna let you go, dude.
Hang on. Let me